Hey, what is up, everybody? Back with another great episode with a founder, this time with the founder of Ethos Network, OX5F Capital. We go really deep into a relevant topic after the recent events that we saw within the AI space about on chain reputation as well as social reputation within the space. Ethos Network is approaching this in a decentralized way of being able to vouch or slash based on your opinion or your findings of another person in this space, and basically allows you to have a ethos score. This score can be very positive if you have high reputation and credibility, or very low if you don't have if you have people voting against you. You start in the middle, obviously, so you're neutral, and then that spectrum moves. We dive into a lot of relevant topics and a lot of ways that this technology can be applied. And I make a comparable to how this is very similar to what we're seeing Cato as well as Cookie build out for their infrastructure on social signal and mindshare. Uh, it's very relevant, and I do think it plays into the AI space and how even having credibility scores help AI agents make decisions and understand who to interact with. Um, it gets deep and it gets interesting. So if that's stuff that interests you, sit back, enjoy. It'll be a great conversation. As always, thank you to our sponsors, Gandhi and Futureproof, for making this show possible and for your continuous feedback and support. It has really shown and helped us take this show to some interesting places. We have incredible guests coming up as well. So stay tuned and make sure you're subscribed and check out all the other ones that are up and coming. So sit back, enjoy, and here's the show. Okay, so this conversation could not have happened at a better time. The I would say the scrutiny on-chain reputation, social reputation, linking the two together, is a hot topic right now. Can you just start off with like what is Ethos Network and why did you start building this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the latter, which is some people know me from Friend Tech. I was one of the original profiles that really believed in Friend Tech and what they were doing. And honestly, I felt like I saw a vision with Friend Tech that some people saw, but most people kind of ignored. And that was this idea of reputation or credibility stored on chain.
Right,
And one of the things that we saw there was everyone was there to farm. Everyone there wanted points, and the only way to do that was you had to buy keys of people. And the risk when you bought a key of someone was either they were going to rug you and they like sold all the keys on an alt, or they like went up in value and you could sell them later. And that like inherent like connecting your Twitter to the actions that you did on Friend Tech, I felt like was the first like real idea that maybe we could tie people's actions with something stored on chain.
right.
And so that was kind of the birth of Ethos in a lot of ways. I saw this opportunity. I tweeted about it a lot. I really believed in what Friend Tech was doing at the time because I felt like that was the opportunity. And I was working a Web 2 job and I was like, well, man, it would be fun to build something like this. Like I should go do it. And so I started Ethos mostly, because of Friend Tech and sort of like the insights we got from it, but also just my experience in the space and getting frustrated myself with like the things that happened over this weekend happening or things not necessarily being fair to everyone, which is just going to happen. But um, like that's kind of how crypto goes. There's a lot of people that take advantage of opportunities and we don't have accountability. We don't have any of those like normal things that we have in Web 2 stored on chain. And I felt like that opportunity combined with kind of like me being passionate about the problem was the perfect time to start Ethos.
I I love there was a Gary V segment where he went on I think like CNBC, and they
Mhm.
basically said like, hey, crypto is this like terrible place and all this terrible stuff happens there. And he kind of hit back and said like, hey, the same thing happens in fiat, it happens with dollars, it's just more
Mhm.
visible on the blockchain because it's easier to track it and
Mhm.
everything's public essentially. One thing that stuck with me though is, well, it's public, but there is no like it doesn't stick with you. You could because it gets
Right.
buried in this, you have to go on the block explorer, you
Mhm.
have to go look through Twitter. there is no easy way to click on, Hunter's name and be like, okay, like he's got a good reputation. We
Hmm.
like him. People trust him. Like there is no easy way to do that. Um, so I get it. It's been needed. You mentioned the events of the weekend. Can you dive into your take on what happened? Maybe it helps lay out what did happen from
Hmm.
your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think over the past couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of interest in the AI space, particularly infrastructure around AI agents and AI agents themselves. And we saw a bunch of reputable and credible people, otherwise, as most people know it, kind of group together and try to create a DAO out of it using, I think it's DAOs.fun.
Correct.
Yeah, and what it ended up turning into was there was kind of a pre-sale for anyone who could get in. They did post it publicly on Twitter, and anyone had a chance to go pitch why they should be in the pre-sale. But what ended up happening is that pre-sale pissed a lot of people off because if they didn't get into it, we found out a couple of days later that all of those pre-sale people got like an 1800x at the all-time high or something.
Yep.
And that's super interesting because there's a lot to unpack with that in terms of credibility and reputation. Some people were mad at influencers who instantly dumped their allocations, while others were like, oh, but come on, you're a trader. You would sell at 1800x, wouldn't you? There was a lot to be said about the fact that the only reason it did so well is because it had so many credible names behind it, right? You had names that people recognized. You felt like these people were going to be committed to doing it.
Right.
If and so like yeah, if you believed in what they were doing, then you should probably participate. And it was really interesting to see this like with meme coins, we didn't really have the like person or team behind something. With NFTs and DeFi and everything before that, like reputation really mattered in that. And then we got away from that with meme coins, and now we're back into it with AI agents. People are like, well, what's their GitHub repo say? Like, is this person like a good dev or what? And I feel like with AICC, or I think it's AI, I don't remember what the CC stands for.
AI accelerate.
Yeah, AI Accelerate. There you go. I think a lot of people were upset that other people made a bunch of money, that it felt a little bit extractive in a number of ways, and it just didn't really seem like the right way to fund something like that, considering they raised like minimal funds and then instantly it's worth $300 million, and it pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And and yeah, and so like people were questioning the reputation of the people that participated or that dumped it. People wanted to have accountability for the people that took that reputation and twisted it a little bit and made a bunch of money off of it. And other people said they didn't do anything wrong. And my goal with Ethos, with regard to that and how I see it coming into play, is not necessarily for me or anyone at Ethos or Ethos itself to have an opinion, but rather to like act as a way to document that stuff, document opinions,
Right.
and qualify them too. So yeah, that's kind of how I took it. I'm curious, like how did you? What was your interpretation?
I think it's hard because I think in some cases there were people on there that I've seen very active in the AI community, giving feedback, helping build AI 16Z in the
Hmm.
Discord. Um, and then I've saw other people who were in there clearly because they did and this is needed within projects, like they were marketing. Um, where I felt like there's a disconnect is we're at a point where a fairer launch, we have the tools. There
Right.
are mechanisms to take in more capital. There were mechanisms to do a rolling out of that allocation everybody got.
Hmm.
Um, I think part of it is the team. I don't think expected the market cap to run to where it went to, but I think there's faults all around, and then I also get the other side of the coin. So I I just I think it's the launch mechanic for me just felt
Yeah.
totally misplaced, and I think the team, yeah, I think just a lot happened, and those early minutes after launch also did not help on the reaction side. So yeah, I'm not trying. I'm trying to have like a good like both sides. I think
Hmm.
also like put yourself in the shoes of somebody who got allocation, right? Your opinion
Right.
changes very quickly.
Hmm.
You're like, oh well, it wasn't that bad. Like It's hard. I didn't get an allocation, so I can kind of do this from like a sideline point of
Mhm.
stance, but um yeah, they're then it kind of comes into question, okay, who are these guys? Like we've
Mhm.
seen them around, but like who are they? Who's vouching for them? Who's
Right.
and to find that you can find some people, but then you're like, okay, but what's the reputation of this guy vouching? I don't know him, and
Mhm.
he's like talking
Mhm.
up a really big game. Um, if you really spend the time, you can do it, but there should be a more I think easier way to just click on somebody to be like, all right, here's what he's done on chain. Here's the wallets that he's claiming
Mhm.
are his. Here's how long he's been around. That seems like something that should be possible in 2025 when we've
Totally.
had the blockchain for so
Yeah.
long.
Yeah, and, like, it's kind of like adding a more objective way to evaluate someone's trust. And one of the things that we've argued for a long time at Ethos is, like, there are ways to look at what you did on chain and evaluate that, but it doesn't really tell you that much. I think I wrote a blog that was like, if you're trying to evaluate someone's credibility on chain, it's like going to a restaurant and saying, "What are all your finances? Like, how do you do business?" And you're using that to evaluate if you're gonna go eat there. Like, that doesn't make sense, right?
There Yeah, because you can only get so much insight from the blockchain. Like, you have to link that to social in some way, which is
Exactly.
why I've been, like, excited about what Kato and Cookie have
Mhm.
been doing, and, I mean, even, like, some of these other, like, claims that have happened where you're starting to see the database repository of all these wallets being linked to socials.
Right.
It has taken off in 2025, which you have to have in order to have that like, hey, this person that blockchain activity on its own doesn't look so sus, but then when you
Mhm.
see, they bought, they tweeted, they sold,
Right.
uh, I mean that turns into question, or even like, hey, they said they bought this, posted a P&L, but let me tell you, buddy, there's not a single blockchain transaction linked to this person that says he
Mhm.
bought anything.
Right, yeah, totally. Yeah, and so, like, I've always argued that you have to combine the activity with the social signal, and, like, if you are like, "Hey, man, where do we wanna go for lunch?" You, like, open Yelp or you open Google Maps and you look at ratings, like, let's be honest, right?
Right. You look at the comments, like you look at like
Yeah,
actual reviews, like, hey,
mhm,
this is what I thought about this place, and
right. And, like, we live in such a social first world where in crypto, where, like, I mean, attention drives everything, therefore social is, like, the heart of attention.
right.
Like, it's really important that we have social signals about what people do, what they've done in the past, who supports them, how credible are the people that support them, because like and it's kind of like unique to this space where you need that kind of objective way of viewing things because it's just so easy. Like there's a good quote that you probably heard in this space too. Having morals is expensive in crypto. And it's because it's so easy to make money without the morals, right?
Yeah.
And it sucks, but, like, I had this big belief that long term, we cannot grow crypto, the pie overall, so long as someone else is extracting value out of it by taking advantage
It
of
can't
that.
be PvP without
Right.
I mean, like, there is no repercussions for a lot of these
Right.
people that are playing a very PvP extractive game.
Totally. And we don't even have insight to a lot of it either, right? Like the things that people say and do publicly on Twitter represent one thing, but like, you and I are probably in a dozen discords and telegrams and different places where people talk about stuff, and that's where the real meat of stuff happens. And like it's just hard to get all of Twitter is like this tiny slice of the perspective of both social and how people interpret those people, what they say and what they do. Like there's so much more to reputation than just what is visible to us, and we're not even capturing any of that today.
Exactly. Yeah, so back to what you guys are building.
Mhm.
Where are you in the rollout of this? How are you
Mhm.
approaching um labeling, like, is it a number that you're assigning to people? Is
Mhm.
it are people how are people vouching? Just walk me through, I guess, more of the
Yeah.
details on Ethos.
Yeah, so we've been building this for probably 8 or 9 months now. We raised capital through a community round, so it was entirely community members that funded us, and we've been building for probably 8 or 9 months. And over the past 3 months, we've been going through smart contract audits. So smart contract audits for all of the things that we store on chain. Super important, easy to gloss over if you're not paying attention. But that means we've been on testnet for a while, and we're about to next week sometime switch over to mainnet on
Oh,
Base.
oh wow.
Um, yeah, which is super exciting. So testnet's gone really well for us. We've had an opportunity to learn a lot about how people are using the product without like the fear of people losing money or the and also without the understanding of how people will use money on mainnet. But at the end of the day, yeah, starting next week, we'll be able to have mainnet data with real users and start giving people objective scores. It's a scoring system between 0 and 2800. Um, Neutral would be kind of in the middle, and you've got reputable and exemplary on the other side of that, and you've got questionable and untrusted on the other side of that. And everyone can fall into this range. Twitter accounts can fall into the range. Ethereum addresses can be reviewed and their score changed by different people. But the goal again is starting with mainnet next week that we'll be able to start documenting and storing some of these social signals to kind of create this credibility score for everyone.
And it's only a of that 0 to 2,800,
Mhm.
it's just overall. It's not like specific assets of a person. It's just, "Hey, overall, this person is
So
on this range."
yeah, there's a bunch of different things that break that it breaks down into. Everyone starts at 1200, which is neutral, which I think is fair. Like a random Twitter address that you don't know, like why would they be reputable, right?
Right.
Um, and you can get some additional points. Like there's a bunch of different attributes, and it's broken down really clearly in the web app. But things like Ethereum account age have a minor impact. Things like Twitter account age have a minor impact. But who invites you to Ethos, because it's all invitation based, has a much bigger impact. Then you get into things like, well, what do people say about you? Do people vouch for you? We haven't really talked about vouching, but that's the idea of like staking ETH against someone's name, showing other people that like, hey, I really trust this person. And so we have all of these kind of pieces that come into play and affect that range from that starting score. And one important note there is like you don't have to have an ethos profile to have a score. Everyone has a score, and everyone's score can be driven up or down based on if people write reviews or even vouch for people, regardless again of if they're on ethos or not.
Wow, okay. Super interesting. Are I mean, there's a million things to pick apart there. I'm trying to think even where to
Mhm.
start. I'd probably wanna start on the idea around, let's say, how are you, like, a gamification here? Like,
Mhm.
that's I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's probably, like, fraud on a anti-fraud protocol, right? Like,
Mhm.
how are you guys making sure that's not gamified so you have scammers being like, "Okay, I wanna, I'll get a bunch of accounts and I'll stake ETH against me and make sure I can drive my reputation up, and then I'll just
Totally.
rinse and repeat this."
Yeah, I mean, it's all in the foundation of the protocol. So where that starts is ethos is invitation only. And ethos is intended to limit the supply significantly to start for invitations. And so a good example is when we launch, we'll launch with 100 users to start. And every user will have one invite that will not get renewed when Ethos starts. And so we'll have 200 users to get started. Those 200 users are going to be, writing reviews, vouching for people. They will have a head start to some extent. But that means that you can't go invite 14 wallets of your own.
Right.
Like, um, that allows us too to kind of like slow roll and observe how people are using Ethos. If you look at our testnet today as an example, there's a significant amount of spam. uh, we still have like limited who gets invites, but like people just spam like GM as a review to like Kobe. It makes no sense, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so with
I don't know why that him specifically, that's hilarious, but
and so like one of the things that we like again going back to the foundation of the product is uh everyone has a score, and if you look like you are writing a bunch of spam reviews and you're trying to farm ethos, I'm not gonna be like, "Hey, man, stop doing that." The intent is to lean on the fundamentals of the product, which
Right.
is people can downvote you. If you get downvoted significantly, your score goes down. We have the concept of slashing. So just like in proof of stake, you have staking against people. You also have slashing. Well, in the future, you'll be able to slash someone and remove a significant amount of their credibility score, or you might get negatively reviewed today for a bunch of that. And so we kind of want to lean on the protocol itself, which again is meant to be open, transparent. Everyone can see it. Therefore, everyone could theoretically game it, to self-moderate it or self-police it in a lot of ways that kind of Reddit does, right? Like
That is
Reddit has
true.
moderators, but like they still have upvoting and downvoting, which theoretically presents the best content at the top.
Right. Well, that is a good and good ancillary service that
Hmm.
I mean, again, there is reputation of quality of posts there,
Right.
where the best rises to the top.
Right, exactly. And so like we want, and by the way, all of that's on chain, right? So like when you go upvote a review or upvote a vouch, that's stored on chain. Um, and you go leave a comment or you leave a review or any of those things, again, they're all on chain. And that gives us a lot of extensibility down the road, but I really like that we've kind of started with this idea of transparency first.
I like that. So that
Yeah.
was kind of a focus on where can it go wrong and how you're defending, which is
Yeah.
not trying to grill you here, but I think that's
No,
a
no.
good. I mean, that's a fair and responsible answer,
Hmm.
and I like it. On the other side of things, where this goes right,
Hmm.
um, you know, how are people gonna have to come onto the protocol? Are you guys gonna have a Chrome plugin that lets a score be displayed directly on top of Twitter?
Hmm. Right.
How are you actively helping stop that fraud?
Yeah, a great question. I mean, we believe that so we do have a Twitter extension, or it's really a Chrome extension that
Okay.
displays scores on Twitter. We think that's really helpful, and like could even be helpful for simple stuff like, oh, this account is the real I like what's a good example? Yuga Labs, right? This is the real Yuga Labs. They have a blue circle and they're reputable. This is the UVVGA Labs or YVVGA Labs that's like, click here to claim your thing. And it has a yellow check mark and it's not blue, right? It's
Right.
yellow or it's red or
It's crazy
something.
how X hasn't solved this. They
I
have
know.
so much
Yeah.
rampant
Yeah.
spam and crap on there that it
Right.
is truly risky without
Mhm. And
having somebody who's actively trying to show you, hey, this is
prevent
the real
that,
one.
yeah. Mhm, right. So, like, that I think it helps in that case at the very least. And then, like, I've been using it a ton, and you're just scrolling through Twitter, and in the future, you'll see people that are blue, you'll see people that are green, green being exemplary, blue being reputable, and then you'll see people that are red and yellow. And my thought process is that should help us filter noise versus signal pretty significantly. Um, I'm sure you remember this in the NFT cycle, and what people don't really want to talk about with AI agents now is like there were so many bots that commented on projects that were being abused. It was basically bots that looked like real accounts that'd be like, "Yeah, I love this token," or "Yeah, we got to support this thing," and it was fake, right? It was
Yeah,
100% fake.
yeah.
Yeah,
To the trained eye, it was easy to tell. To
exactly.
new entrants, and I think that's where I think for most people that are watching, they've been around and they
Mhm.
get that you can tell spam and fraud pretty
Right,
easily.
right.
Um, but to the new entrants, and especially going to 2025, where you have the administration, you have Luca
Hmm.
Nuts on Abstract about to bring in all these people through Web two,
Right.
Phase, and what banks are doing, bringing people in from Web
Hmm.
two and from social media. These people have no idea who, DC Investor is, right?
Right, right.
Versus who is, yeah, I won't name a person I think is a
You know who's,
non-revu
like you
yeah,
know who's controversial out there, right? And,
sure,
like, you don't even have to have the opinion that they're unreputable, it's just that, like, they're controversial, and
right,
you need, like, even just knowing that when X person says Y, there's a high likelihood that they are selling to you.
sure,
It doesn't have to be, super opinionated, it's really just about having that information somewhere.
right.
Yeah,
How
and, like
do you think this affects KOLs and influencers?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think it adds a layer of accountability, right? But I think it's really tough because we have this thing called bag bias, and you see it happen all the time. Yeah, like Hyperliquid is a great example of it. Like, I love Hyperliquid. I think it's great. I got a great airdrop from them, and I'm a big supporter long term. I've never once shared anything really. I mean, maybe a couple things about Hyperliquid, and you've got people like Tay calling out Hyperliquid and their security measures, and people just like relentlessly
Oh my
attacking
god. It
her.
was insane.
Yeah,
I will admit, my initial reaction was like, "Get the fuck out of here."
right.
And that was even after, like, looking into Tay and being like, and then it's like, "Okay, just flooding the bags." But
Mhm.
it took, like I mean, it took, like, 2 hours of, like, really figuring out, like, "Okay, who are these people vouching for
Right.
Tay?" And then I
Yeah.
was like, "Wait a second. Wait, Tay
Is
knows
reputable.
Tay
Yeah.
is very reputable. Why
Yeah,
why
yeah,
is everybody,
right.
like, dogpiling here?" It's bag
Mhm.
bias,
Yeah, it's back bias,
mostly.
yeah. And so, that will be a really interesting thing that I think will play out on Ethos, that, like, we have to kind of get over that as, like, a maturity part of crypto, and we may never, and there might always be people that, like, succumb to bag bias, but as an example, let's say that someone did go, like, slash, Tay on Ethos or negatively review her. Well, dude, like, even like now we look back and like no one really cares and thinks that Tay was actually doing the right thing. And you look like kind of an idiot because you like wrote a bunch of negative things about him, right? About her. And so like it's an interesting one where like, well, if you have the accountability of like that's always against your name and anyone can go observe it, well maybe you think twice before you like just go out of your way being completely anonymous and tearing someone apart.
Hmm, that is true. That
And so
is
that
true.
like, I mean, this is an internet problem, right? This is like one of the internet's oldest problems is like, well, anyone can spin up any
Well,
account
there's never
and
been real reputational accountability on the internet, right?
right.
Like,
Exactly.
I think you might be able to say this for, like, certain countries that have been, like, super progressive and
Mhm,
authoritative against, like, online and even IRL actions. I think China
mhm,
is a society that, like, has kind of, like, said, like, "Hey, like, if you post something or if you do something wrong," like, there's a
mhm.
social score, I believe, in China.
Right, yeah, mhm, right.
Um, I think there's controversy around that. Uh I I think part of that might be, like, how, aggressive that is applied across everything in your life,
Mhm.
which some might say is good, some might say is bad. Um, how do you I mean, how does
I
Ethos
have a great objection to that,
Okay,
yeah,
no, I mean, no,
yeah.
I'm not I mean, I could
No.
give you my take there, but I'm curious what
Yeah,
your
and
objection is.
lots of people say it, like, there's also the Black Mirror episode called Nosedive.
Great episode, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, and, like, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like, everyone in real life has a social score, and, you can see that social score, like, so you interact with the social score, and, like, she's trying to get an apartment, and she can't because her credit score isn't high enough or
Right.
her social score isn't high enough, and I think one of the things that is really easy to miss with both like the existing framework in China and Nosedive is like those are kind of weird in like perfect societies. But the reality of crypto is we live in a very imperfect society. We live in a very like knives out society in crypto. And so there can be an argument for two things, which one is we kind of need it in crypto. Like there could be a time and place for having a social credit score in crypto or on the internet is probably a pretty good one. The other thing is in China's like social credit system, it's completely owned by the government.
Mm.
We're talking about doing the
It's
opposite of that,
completely
right?
centralized. Yeah, that is a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
counterpoint, actually.
Yeah, like anyone can observe it, anyone can go see what goes into the score, anyone can go influence that, and ideally we all own it collectively together. And like that is a very different world where like yeah, you're still going to be victim or subject to politics or mafia style takedowns on ethos one day where a bunch of people group together and say no 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 this person sucks, but like you will get through that eventually to a more like modern state of nature like way that people interact with each other.
Mm.
But I argue that we need it, and if you need it then you must do it in like a transparent and open permissionless decentralized way.
Yeah, that is true. That is the risk of, if it is centralized, you also don't know how much a thumb could be on the scale for somebody,
Right. Mhm.
or what isn't being accounted for, right? Like,
Right.
that is a really valid point. But it
Mhm.
does, I think some would even say, though, like, okay, let's say there is somebody who's getting jumped on like Tay.
Mhm.
Uh, that Tay could be left with, a less than reputable score. And now
Mhm.
it's like, okay, well, everybody else has a consensus of like, hey, that's wrong. This is just, bag bias,
Mhm.
etc. That should be fixed and like somebody should fix
Right.
that. But you're saying that the efficiencies of that are you look like an idiot by saying not reputable when she is reputable.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, like, imagine that in that scenario, you could have seen people's ethos scores who were commenting, right? And like I don't like the average hyperliquid holder might have had a lower reputation or less experience in the space, whereas the people that were backing Tay might have been super reputable and
Yeah.
super. It's like adding the objectivity to that score. Like, and we think about it a lot, like the ELO system in chess, where like two people are matched against each other. Measuring the difference actually gives you, an outcome that you can apply back to the algorithm. But you can measure that difference and have a really good understanding of relativity between two people.
Mm.
And so we think of it a lot like the ELO score, where like someone who is like, let's say that you're 2200, you're exemplary, and Tay's 1700, and there's a bunch of 1100 people that are just ripping on Tay. Well, the 2200 person could come in and be like, no, no, Tay is actually super reputable and have an outsized impact compared to 10 people who are 600 points below her. Does that make
Let's
sense?
let's take yeah, this makes perfect sense, and it leads into a question or a topic that I wanted to bring up, and an individual that I think is probably one of the most relevant to this,
Hmm.
is Zach. Zach,
Yeah.
XBT,
Hmm.
who is possibly is the, white knight of on-chain investigations and
Hmm.
fraud investigations and tracking down, stolen capital,
Hmm.
and, we don't deserve him. He's a great
Right.
guy.
Totally.
Let's look at this. Does this become a tool to him? Does this become something that allows for him to help? I mean, he'll have probably one of the highest on-chain reputations, right?
Hmm.
Does this allow him to enact like his calls on bad actors in a more succinct way instead of just through Twitter?
Hmm.
Um, I mean, he has to
Yeah.
be somebody that has been part of internal discussions quite a
Oh,
bit.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I've talked to Zach briefly about this a little bit because, I mean, he's kind of a target audience in a lot of ways for like people that you want to contribute to Ethos
Mm,
that
yeah.
are saying things and saving them on chain. Like Zach has the luxury, luxury. I don't know if that's the perfect right word, but he is at the top of the list of those people, right? And what I think Ethos enables and what I want to enable is not just for Zach to be able to do that and be rewarded, but we want 10,000 Zachs, right? We want 10,000, 100,000 people out there who feel like they can build their own reputation up and be empowered to call out people who are doing bad things so that like I don't think that Zach is necessarily the source of truth in a lot of equations, but he can be, and people look to him for it. So we need more Zachs, right? We
Right,
need more people than just Zach doing that. And like Zach's tools are like Arkham and TRM Labs and some of
yeah.
the blockchain analysis stuff. And like I'd like to think like maybe this is like his research paper. He publishes it on Ethos kind of thing, right? The findings go on Ethos kind of thing.
Is it possible to
Um,
do that? Like, there's, like, on a specific person or topic that you can, like, post takes or
Yeah, I mean, it'd just be a review.
review? Gotcha.
But he could also slash someone, right? And we haven't really talked a lot about slashing. It's not currently in the product. But a good example is, let's say Zach found someone that did something that he believed was wrong. We have this concept of slashing, again, just like proof of stake, where validators can get slashed if they do something wrong. You could get slashed on Ethos for doing something that like the public thinks is wrong.
Mm, yeah.
One of the ways that we've thought about this is two different methods. One would be Zach could risk his social capital to slash someone. So like everything has to have a bond. So let's say Zach is like, I'm going to risk 400 of my ethos score and I'm going to call this person out. It goes to people, maybe other reputable people, to vote and provide consensus. And if he's right, then that person loses the social capital. If he's wrong, then Zach loses his social capital. We've also talked about doing this and intend to do this on financialized backed assets. So if Zach is staking in Ethos and it turns out Zach did something wrong, or if he called someone out that was staking and did something wrong, that person could lose some of their financial assets
I
too.
mean, it is very it feels familiar to like a prediction market
Hmm.
to me in some way.
Yeah, it's like one of the like truest forms of the prediction market is like theoretically information has a financial reward to come out earlier than the market would usually have
Right.
access to
We
it.
saw that with the election.
And I had always made the case of like the remember the HBO documentary where they were like, "Who is Satoshi?"
Yeah.
And people were voting on it. And you're like, well, if you just like if you were the intern that got coffee on the show, you know who the HBO film named Satoshi was, right?
Right.
Like an insider would know. And like I don't think anyone advocates for insider trading, but the reality of the market is it's driven by insider trading. And having that information before it's available is a feature of a prediction market.
Right. You're essentially you are bringing out the information at the earliest point because of financial incentive.
Because someone has the, yeah, ability to make money on it, which again, like that's not really that different than most markets today, but when it's around information, then it becomes really interesting and compelling. And I think similarly, like what we're talking about today with Ethos Networks is very aligned with that. Like whoever slashes him first might have a reward. There's a product that we're working on right now that is even more down that route, towards the speculative side of things, that is very aligned with that philosophy. And I don't want to share too much about it today, but the prediction market is kind of the right direction to start thinking about things, like especially when it comes out to rewarding truth.
Right. Rewarding truth.
Hmm.
Trust, credibility, and reputation are the 3 big words that I think of when I thought of Ethos Network and what you guys are
Totally.
doing. Um, the financialize, the risk part of that
Hmm.
is when you think of those 3 are it again, it just has not existed. It really has only existed in social context, right?
Right.
Like, what
Hmm.
you know, "Oh, I might lose some, like, social rep here.
Right.
Social trust might go away." There was never financial as, "Hey, I have
Yeah, financial
actual
backing is
stake."
kind of, yeah, like, there's some examples, like, "Hey, your buddy needs to sign an apartment, and no one will give him money." Like, no one will let him sign a lease by himself, so you co-sign on it,
Right.
right? Or like or like, yeah, someone's like, "I wanna sign co-sign on this car with me because my credit sucks." Um, and so, like, they do kind of exist, but, like, you can make the same argument about Ethereum. Ethereum, like, to exist, needs validators. They look at transactions that happen. People put ETH up that is risked, and though that ETH validates transactions, and they have a risk of getting slashed. So like you can't just make money, you have to have the risk of losing money too as a validator. And I think similarly, you need that similar, like we call it like security in price, where like uh not anyone can get vouched because it requires money. And since there is financial downside and upside, like people are more thoughtful than just putting money against someone's name. And I think that's a really important aspect we've
Yeah.
never seen. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. This might be like a reach, but I back in 2021, for the
Mhm,
people that were around then, you had kind of this, hey, if something's launching on ETH as like an NFT versus
mhm,
launching on Polygon,
mhm.
you're probably in a better place to go and like buy that ETH project because there's real capital put in
Yes.
to launch that versus
Mhm.
Polygon, it was like 5 cents
Free. Mhm.
and or free and like, you know, there's like real capital on the line or actual
Right.
like
It's
more
not a reach
capital on
at
the line.
all.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very much aligned. And
Yeah.
like we could go into like more crypto macro stuff, but you're like, I think that's part of what we've seen a lack of this cycle is like it's really easy to like send transactions that look legitimate that don't cost the user any money dude, how many NFT I'm sure you did the same thing. How many NFTs you mint that cost like $3,000 to mint or something,
Yeah,
right? Like,
a
just
lot, a
crazy
lot.
amount, right?
Yeah,
And like, and yeah, the founder had to put money in and put money up to do that.
yeah,
Like, there was this security in price, and the second you drive the price to 0, which is the right thing theoretically, it just makes it easier to, like, wash trade or make it look like there's volume when there's not
right.
volume. And so, like, that's why we can't just have reviews in Ethos. It can't just be Yelp. It can't just be Trustpilot. You need the, like, economic backing too.
Yeah. No, we've seen a ton of that this cycle so far. Pump.fun being on the like wash trading side or volume
Right. Mhm.
bots. You have these projects that would launch and you'd have, $100,000 worth of volume in 20 minutes
Mhm.
and it's just a bot
Right.
and the team put it up and they're going to take
Yeah.
the 5% hit on the fees,
Right.
but they
The
all of a
upside's
sudden they're
worth it.
trending, right? Like
Mhm. Yeah.
do you guys address that? Is that an area where, all of a sudden Dex Screener, Dex Tools, whoever might want to integrate you, if
Mm.
it's to their advantage, are able to be like, "Hey, like here are like here's the volume overall, but here's verified reputable volume."
Mhm. I mean, yeah, you're getting to, like, the long-term vision for sure, which is,
Right?
like, if suddenly you can have a more trustful space, then real builders, people that are really trying to build things that matter, that are not just there to make it today and tomorrow and then dump it, should get more of a platform and should have more of an opportunity to have that platform. And so you could imagine having something like imagine if like I'm not saying that this will happen because I I've never talked to him before, but like imagine if Pump.Fun said like, yeah, to create a Pump.Fun, you have to have 1600 on Ethos, right? That like that's really interesting actually. Like, does
That
that
yeah, that I think it pisses a lot of people off, but but no,
but
but that like you get your own category. All of a sudden it's like, "Hey,
right,
verified real user, this is the
right.
guy launching it. It is his wallet."
With people
Um,
backing him, right? With people backing them that are also technically risking their own reputation by backing that person.
right.
And
Okay, but, I'll hit you with a counter to that. So
mhm,
you have a financial kind of risk
mhm,
having your reputation, doing your stuff. Adding a additional layer of that. When I go launch, let's say a Hunter launches a Pump.Fun,
mhm,
it doesn't go so hot. But now
mhm,
people have lost capital. Now they're like, "Ah, fuck this guy. He's a rugger. Screw him."
mhm,
But, like, let's say because not n it's not always a founder's fault that something doesn't go right. Like, we have
right,
to look at the traditional Web 2, Web 1 business world. Like,
mhm,
not every business goes well. If
right,
somebody is authentically like, "Hey, this is a meme. This is a joke," and then people lose money, I think it's way different when you're, like, making promises, you don't deliver
yeah,
on them,
right, right,
but
mhm,
you do have people that then can turn around and be like, "Nah, screw this guy. Like, I lost capital."
mhm.
Is that I mean, I know
Yeah,
these are
it
fringe
is, yeah.
cases, but I
No,
yeah.
I actually argue that is, like, how a lot of crypto that's a lot of crypto's problem right now, is, like, how do you identify someone who never had any intent to ever follow through with it, versus and evaluate that later,
Mm,
versus, like, someone who did have intent, they really put their heart into it for a while, and the market conditions are wrong, it didn't work out, and they walked away, and they didn't make it their life's mission. Do you still hate them? Maybe not. Maybe if they were really explicit about expectation setting and like this is not intended to be anything more than it is. And I think you've seen that in certain projects. Certain projects are really clear about what their intent is, and the other ones that over index on saying this is what the roadmap looks like and they never deliver, it's more obvious, but there's a lot of gray area there. And yeah, to be completely frank, I'm not really sure how that will play out. That's why like we're trying to be in the business of making the tools such that people can help us understand how that will play out and ensure that like it's properly representing people's opinions and not like fucking anyone over unnecessarily too.
yeah.
It's a tough
Right.
problem.
It is a tough problem. I don't wanna jump off it too quickly because 'cause we're
Hmm.
on kind of this topic of, like, integrations,
Hmm.
and we've talked about, up to today, a lot of the past things that we've seen.
Hmm.
An area that on the future of on-chain stuff that I think is super relevant, and I put a tweet out about this because I had somebody else kind of bring it up, and we had a long convo, went through their data terminal. Artificial intelligence all of a sudden
Mhm.
becomes a big actor in the space, and we
Mhm.
see the interaction of accounts to agents increasing only more and more.
Mhm.
How does having a reputation association impact AI agents in the space?
Yeah, so this is
I know this is like
no, no,
it's
no,
insane
it's
that
good.
it's a thing,
It's
but I
actually
think it's an
important.
actual real thing that many people aren't thinking about.
Mhm. So there's two parts I wanna talk about here. The first is people forget that we've seen AI agents on Twitter, AI agents in quotes on Twitter for like 10 years. They're called bots, and they just reply to things, and they look like humans, and they're not. That's always a problem. And it was in our pitch deck a year ago. Like, hey, we have this problem on Twitter where it's really tough to know, like, is that a real person or is it someone that's reputable? And you said earlier, you and I can probably tell, but like, that's not the point. Most
Right.
people should be able to tell. That applies for AI agents too, right? Like, now that they're a dime a dozen, anyone spinning it up, anyone can go launch something. Like, do you care about the reputation of the AI agent? Yeah, probably, right? Like, if you asked my co-founder, Ben, one of the things we talked about early on was, like, proof of humanity, which, like, WorldCoin and some others are trying to do, is interesting for a bot, right? Like, yeah, I wanna know if it's a human or not, but there's a world where, like, you don't care. You care if that thing, whether it a bot or a person, is reputable,
Hmm.
and so, like, there is a world where you don't know anything about the other person and it's actually an agent, as long as they're reputable, then that's still good. So like, and if that reputation is secured by other people or even other bots or agents or whatever, like as long as you have that system in place that kind of offers some checks and balances a little bit, that's better than proof of humanity.
Mm, yeah, it
Um,
is. It's
yeah,
it's a more granular version of proof of
perspective,
humanity.
yeah,
Yeah.
and, like, what we haven't seen from agents yet, like, well, like, if they were truly agents, then the best agents would be stealing all of our money, in my opinion, because the easiest way to make money is not like I mean, yeah, you could go shill a bunch of stuff, you become a KOL bot, and you shill stuff, and AI XBT is like, "Go buy this thing," and then he buys it 5 minutes before he knows he's gonna do it, but the better way to do it would be just, like, scam people, right? And so, like, they're not agentic because they're not actually scamming people yet. Like, it eventually they will because they have no reputation on the line.
That's one that's such a Black Mirror take.
Yeah.
2, that's a hard one, right? Because n none of these agents really have on-chain actionability built in a meaningful way yet.
Right. Mhm.
Um, and then it becomes like, okay, what is their purpose? Like, how is the model acting,
Mhm.
or the group of models that make up a singular agentic, uh, goal?
Mhm.
Because I think that's what we're gonna get towards is, like, having like, instead of it just being, like, a singular model, you have, like, 3
Right.
or 4 different models all in
Which are
conjunction
doing other things. It's
doing other
evaluating
things.
a market or trading a market
Yeah,
while it tweets. Yeah. But right
yeah.
now it feels very like singular. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the most efficient way to gain capital in a world where it doesn't exist, where that harm or that tracking can't
Mhm.
be linked to, is to, I guess, then go after and be like, "Hey, I have no real reputational risk here,
Right.
so why don't I just go."
Scam
Yeah,
people. Yeah.
that is yeah, that's kind of
Especially
fucked.
I know. Especially when you're like, "Oh, I could spin up a million of these bots that scam people," right?
Yeah,
Because like, it doesn't
if you
cost
spend
anything.
you know what's scary? When you go on have you ever used breadcrumbs?
I have not used breadcrumbs. What is it?
Yes, breadcrumbs.ai or
Mm.
I forget what it is, but it's a blockchain explorer that lets you pull up like, you can put in a wallet, and then it'll basically make a spider web of, "Here's all the wallets that
Yeah,
came
I've seen, like,
in, here's all the wallets come out."
Bubble
You
Maps
could
kinda does this.
basically build out this map. If you go look at some of these wallets, they are absolute networks of mazes and labyrinths of,
Mhm.
you know,
It's just code too. It's,
it
like,
just
pretty easy to do if you know how to code, right? You're like because you can spin up a new wallet, you can
Well, no, and nobody understands that either, that
yeah,
this is, like, is not a human sitting at a computer managing, 400 different MetaMask accounts. It
mhm.
is they have a UI, they have software, they have an algorithm, they can just click 10 new wallets, boom, they pop
Oh,
up,
yeah, yeah, mhm,
splitter contract, boom, and that's kinda like V1 of automation,
right,
etcetera. Then if you start it's only gonna get crazier.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, if you, like, looked at any of the, like, Layer 0 when Layer 0 was trying to distribute their token, Brian really worked really hard to prevent a lot of the Sybil farms, and they had these, like, amazing graphs of, like, oh, yeah, all you had to do is, like people were trying to hide it behind 1 extra connection or something, and then you have this huge graph of 10,000 addresses and stuff. Um, like,
What
our
what is the future of, like, on-chain exploration and, like, block explorers look like in your
mm,
eyes, and how does what you're doing at Ethos play into that or get affected by that?
yeah, I mean, it's kinda tough. I would like to think that because certain wallets would be connected to certain Ethos accounts, when you're looking at a block explorer, you might be able to get more signal out of seeing this
Mhm.
wallet transacted on this thing
Right,
or this wallet, like and people have tried to do this already. Even Dex Screener like has like 6 things that they check or um, Ether Scan has like this is a confirmed contract address or something.
right.
Like I'd like to think that you could be able to do that for people too. And, like, kinda Arkham kinda does this already in a lot of ways, like, people kind of community notes, like, what wallets are what and give you that insight. And so, like, where I think we could help is, like, hydrating that information even further of not only, like yeah, it's labeled as Arkham, but also, like, Arkham I mean, it's labeled as, like, I don't know, BlackRock or something, but, like, BlackRock also, has this reputation of doing X, Y, and Z. So, like, kind of adding information, but not necessarily, like, driving, significant change in a block explorer.
That makes sense. I I kind of view you guys, as, like, an ancillary plugin to, like, all these different services
Yeah,
and
totally.
algos if, as you guys expand and can address more accounts.
Mhm,
I put out a tweet about all the different categories within AI agents that I thought were important,
mhm.
safety, launch pads, data
Yep.
aggregation. I think you guys, for me, also fall under like for agents to understand when they're interacting with a Twitter
Oh,
account,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
because that was the other side of agents I wanted to kind of touch on was like you have people asking AIXBT for, request. AIXBT does not reply to everybody.
Right. Mhm,
And on the back end of that data terminal, if I've paid really close attention,
mhm.
the AIXBT has I would say a social score, a social influence score that I think it's probably
Yeah.
pulling from like Cato. That's
Mhm.
again, I'm kind of
It's just a
throwing
way to qualify, right?
right.
Some way to qualify, should I respond and waste my time or shouldn't I? Yeah.
But are you guys gonna offer like APIs into
Oh,
your
yeah, dude.
yeah,
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, like, that's part of the vision is ethos everywhere, and that's why we built the Chrome plugin for
right.
Twitter to start for users. Yeah, I mean, we have an API right now where you can basically ask it, for this Twitter user, what is their score?
Can you do
And
that for a wallet as well?
for wallet as well.
And
And if
what blockchains do you guys support?
it's just the EVM, so
EVM.
Ethereum-based addresses right now. The cool thing about Ethos is like theoretically, because we aggregate data, we could support Solana. Like we could say, if you wanted to say this was my ETH wallet and my Solana wallet, it would be very easy to do so. Um, but yeah, like I believe that it's really important for Ethos to be everywhere because it helps with that qualification. And so, like, yeah, you can imagine you're looking at Blur and you're looking at a listing or something, and it's like, oh, I know who that is, or like, oh, this is someone who's not credible, or not that that's really important there, but still helpful. Um, there are a bunch of different places that we could bring it. If you think about like what Echo does, even like let's say there's a completely anonymous founder on Echo that's trying to do a deal. And yeah, like a lot of times the VCs act as like the vouching agent. Like, yeah, I trust this guy, met him before, like he's building something good. But imagine on Echo if like you could not only see all of the investor or Legion for that matter, you could not only see all of the the person who's building the thing and their score and who backs them and who they know, but also like the potential investors. Because a lot of the potential investors on Echo, as an example, are people that are like, just sign me up. Like, I
Yeah.
don't care. Give me allocation, right? And as like a builder, you're like, yeah, it's nice to have the money, but like the value of Echo to me is you have a community behind you that is financially aligned with you.
Yeah. I had a meeting this morning which, really interesting point came up around, like, groups of people,
Hmm.
and why would you use one thing over another, and I think knowing who's in the room with you is
Hmm.
underrated.
Yeah, totally.
One area is like, you could what if you were able to pull up like on Uniswap, all of a sudden it's like average, past 24 hours of average swaps has a credibility score average of this.
Right.
And all
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like, okay, wait, like a lot of the volume that's just happened here has been from really high credible users. Well, what does that
Mhm.
indicate? The
Yeah.
same thing if like you have something that's minting on like OpenSea and it's minting out and it's halfway done and it says credibility score average of these
Exactly.
first 1,000 mints are all credible people
Yeah.
versus hey, these are all we don't very there's a low credibility, or there isn't a lot of people of credibility scores even yet here. Well,
Right.
that kind of opens up a question of like who are these
Who
people. And
is buying it? Yeah.
yeah.
No, you're on the right path. I mean, we've talked about, um, I've been thinking about like Twitter group DMs would actually be easy for us to be like, show me the aggregate score of everyone in this DM. And even even which like there are some DMs where I'm like, this is not like this is
Yeah,
not a great
who's
DM
in
yet.
here?
Yeah. And even right now you can use it and it will show you what everyone's score is as they're sending messages in the DM.
Oh,
And so it
really?
can yeah, it can be helpful in that sense. Um
What has been your most interesting interaction so far with Ethos for you personally?
mm,
Have you had one where you're like, oh shit."
I would probably say like if I were being super frank and because I'm not capable of not being, I was pretty critical of Shaw um like 6 weeks ago on Ethos. And I did a bunch of research from what other people were saying on Twitter and tried to kind of pull it together and make it public. Like what were people saying and what were they doing? And I made that public and wrote about it and said something about social signals being pretty helpful. And I got some backing and I got a lot of heat. And I've never really been in a situation where like I'm publicly talking about something and like people are shitting on me. Um, and then, like, for 6 weeks, I felt pretty bad about it, like, his token was going up, like, people were believing in him, like, maybe I was wrong, maybe this guy's legit, and I had to do a pretty big, like, self-reflection of, like, "Well, did I fuck up here?" Like, I don't like, this is on chain. Like this is there forever, right? Like, this is exactly what I've always been talking about. And it's super important that you as the founder, you're using the product and understand how it
Right,
makes
yeah,
people feel.
exactly.
Yeah. And Shaw's token went to $2 billion. And I think in the last week, you've seen a lot of the things that I had said that I intended to make clear to people when his token was $250 million, that like he has a history that people should know about. And those things have popped up, and people have come back and apologized to me and said, "Oh, you might have been right about this information that you shared." And I'm not trying to say that I have a public opinion about Shaw, but like that I tried to pull those things together, and it was kind of a humbling experience of like, this is what it's like to like call someone out. And because of bag bias, like it can lead to people getting super pissed at you. How do we make sure that the people that use Ethos feel empowered to share that information, which is
Mm,
important? And even they might be wrong in the short term, and they might be right in the long term, or they might have been completely wrong altogether.
right.
Um, how do we continue to make sure that people still share that info, right? And I think that was like a humbling and like kind of like oh shit moment for me where like we really need to get that part right. And if we don't, then people won't share their thoughts.
Yeah, that's I mean, that I think when you give somebody flowers or roses
Hmm.
on Twitter right now, because that's you can't do it on chain, right?
Right.
That is there's no backlash there aside from some people being like, "Well, fuck that guy, he's a scammer,
Right,
what are
right.
you doing?"
Mhm. But it gets
But
drowned out.
it gets drowned out.
Mhm.
And there also isn't like there's no risk to being a nice guy.
Mhm.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
I have operated under the thought process of like I'm a nice guy. Like I'll never hide that. I'll never try to be something I'm in a thought in authentically not.
Mhm.
Um, but there is so much risk on the line, and when you go and say something negative about somebody,
Yeah.
especially if it's wrong, um, can you just touch more on, like, that side of things? Because you are really like, in a permanent way saying
Mhm.
taking a take on somebody,
Mhm.
um, like, what is to keep you from, like, really burning yourself there and being like, "Why oh, shit, why would I ever wanna do this again?"
Yeah, I
Unless
mean
unless you're just like, "No, I don't care if I'm right or wrong, like, I truly do believe this," like
no, no, it's true. I try to kinda take from, like, things that we know from Web 2. Like, from Web 2, the spiciest that people really get on like, in terms of, like, potentially ruining their reputation, saying something negative, honestly, is like I'd say it's Glassdoor. Like, you leave a job and you're like, "Fuck that place, man. That place sucked." Like, I'm giving it a one-star review, and you probably say a little more than you should, but there's no risk there, right? There's no risk really, like, maybe they remove it. You're
Yeah.
not gonna dox yourself unless you're an idiot and, like, give too much information in your review. Um, and so we don't have a ton of things to pull from in Web 2. You could look at, employers being like, "Oh, I'll never hire that again." And there used to be people that talked about, private block lists that existed in
Yeah.
Silicon Valley of like employees that you should never hire and
Yeah,
stuff.
burn notice on your
Yeah,
name across the
yeah.
valley, yeah.
Right. But, like, we haven't really seen this yet, and there are a couple of things that we've thought about that I think could mitigate this while still kind of preserving truth. One of them is the idea of, like, a zero knowledge review. And because we can do things like say, well, this is quantifiably how credible someone is, you could imagine saying, I, as someone who is reputable on Ethos, who has 100 backers between the range of 50,000 and $100,000 vouched against me, make this statement. And you don't ever have to know who that person is. You could maybe like obfuscate who that person is even more than that, just like a reputable person.
Right,
Well, then you could be anonymous and you could write something or like sort of anonymous and write something and still get the truth out. The problem is well then yeah, like you don't risk the social capital of like being wrong, or you don't risk the social capital of like you're not as thoughtful when you do that, I guess. So that's one thing that we've thought about and talked about because a lot of people have given us feedback of like, I have opinions, but I don't know that I would ever publicly share them.
yeah, yeah, I mean, that's the crazy part, like, uh, I mean, even recently, there's been people that I've had conversations about in private conversations, but I know they'll never say that out loud,
Hmm.
and it means a lot to me that they'll share those thoughts and those takes,
Hmm.
but they're like, "Well, no, I would never say that out
Right.
loud."
So like I still want to be able to enable that to some extent because there's still value in those words. The problem has always been with anonymity is like you can't quantify where it came from. So like one anonymous message is just as equally weighted as another one. Um, the thing that I believe is most true is that there will be more that is said in people not reviewing each other than there is in them reviewing them. So if people know that you and me, Hunter, went on this talk and chatted about something, I should probably review you. And if you're going through shit and people are like, fuck that guy, if I'm not going to bat for you,
Yeah,
there
that
might be
says a
more said
lot.
and not.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so like that's where I'm like, well, we might kind of solve that problem too, where you can read between the lines of who supports who and who
Oh, that's
doesn't support
crazy. Yeah, because in my head it was, are you gonna be downvoted or upvoted? There is also vocalization in not
Right.
participating
Yeah.
on some
Yeah.
level.
And, like, it's hard to see that now, but it exists everywhere,
Yeah.
right? Like, I like it's pretty easy to see what I believe in with trading because I don't tweet about meme coins, right? I don't really care about meme coins. I don't I can't trade them and I'm not good at trading them. And so you'll never see me trade a meme coin and I talk about it, right? Um, and like you see certain VCs never say anything about Hyperliquid, or you see lots of VCs focus on one thing and never say anything about something else. And like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, there's often more said in what's not said than what it actually comes out on crypto Twitter.
That is a fair point.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through, obviously you're on test net right now. Let's
Hmm.
say there's somebody listening who this has resonated deeply with. What
Yeah.
what should they do? How do they get involved? Are you guys doing an airdrop? Are you guys
Hmm.
doing grants? Are you doing
Hmm.
integrations? Or you need help with anything? Like let's get it
Yeah.
all out
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, no, great question. So I would highly encourage anyone that's listening to this that's interested, go join our Discord, which is plastered all over our website and mine and the Ethos Network Twitter.
It's
Um,
ethos.network is the URL.
ethos.network. Go join the Discord, get in there so that you can get a testnet invite, so you can go play around with it. Because it's the best opportunity right now to understand how does it work, what does a vouch mean, like what does it look like when 5,000 people write GM to each other as reviews versus what it might look like on mainnet. That's one of the best ways, and we are doing a snapshot of testnet activity sometime at the end of this week. So I would definitely go in. If you mention that you came from here, we'll get you all hooked up with everything. The next thing I would say is when it comes to mainnet, there are still going to be several ways that you can earn contributor XP, is what we call it. People that are contributing to Ethos and helping understand who is trusted and who isn't trusted by writing reviews or vouching for people participating in Ethos. There will be an initial claim that is for people in the community that are reputable, that we've identified ourselves, that will go live at the launch. And then there are ways, even though you might not have one of those first 100 or 200 invites on Ethos, to still earn contributor XP, even though you're not necessarily writing reviews every day. Part of that comes into our through our new product that we haven't announced yet, where you will also be able to provide trust signals, but anyone can participate, which is cool. And then the other one would be we're going to have a way where the Chrome extension will actually earn you contributor XP as
Hmm.
you're using it, so that we think that's where really the biggest value add that we have is, and so we want to make sure that that's at least reasonably incentivized.
Makes sense. We've seen, Rug Radio or Myriad also go that route of Chrome extension while
Mm-hmm.
scrolling or listening, getting rewards through.
Exactly.
It seems like that's a big theme we're gonna see in 2025.
Mhm. They're so power Chrome extension is the most underrated and powerful product out there. And dangerous too, to be clear. It's like dangerous.
Very you really wanna make sure you're,
Yeah.
like, installing from the right place and a reputable
Mhm.
team, but,
Yep.
oh my god, yeah. No, I was building AI extensions for,
Mhm.
like, trying on clothes, so, like, you click
Mhm.
on a shirt, you can just have it pop up with
That's
what it
cool.
looks like on you,
Yeah.
uh, but the power behind what you can do with a Chrome extension
Mhm.
and it is a slept on, area. I think it
Yeah.
just because it's not on your phone and app store,
That's the only thing
it's
that's
kind of out of the
left.
way,
Yeah. Mhm.
but, it is a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
Uh, do you mind touching on, like, Ethos versus XP?
Mhm.
Is Ethos something that'll have, like, a liquidity pool that, like, will have, like, a dollar value against it that you can purchase or,
Not to start. We haven't quite figured out exactly what we're going to do with that yet. The contributor XP is what you earn in Ethos for providing trust signals, is the easiest way to explain it. Again, you write a review, you get XP. You vouch for someone, you get XP every day. They vouch for you back, you guys both get more XP every day. And so we look at that as the work that you are doing on Ethos is you are providing trust to other people. If I go vouch for you, that helps everyone, right? Like, so we're giving contributor XP to start. And we believe that we will have ways for people to use contributor XP in the future. um, through various different mechanisms that I don't want to talk about right now. But there are ways that we can imagine already using, like, you've earned this trust that you've contributed to everyone else. How might you dictate the future of Ethos, or how might you yeah, see, I said I wasn't gonna go into it and I did anyways, but like, like elevate yourself in some way in Ethos. And so like we've thought carefully about how contributor XP works, but feel really good about the fact that like you in order to earn it, you need to provide trust signals to other people.
Okay, yeah, I will out of respect to you not push too hard there, but I can see where that plays into or I can interpolate in some sense where that goes. It's super cool. Um and a much needed product. I
Yeah.
I don't know how long you have because I said this would be like an hour and 10 possibly, but of the entire market that you see right now,
Mhm.
we're the year just started.
Mhm.
A lot of people are saying the bull market's just heating up. Um, the on-chain reputation side of things from like a B2B perspective that you guys are doing is going to
Mm.
take some time to integrate out.
Mhm.
What do you think if you could get like one company and be like, "Hey, we should be your integration. This changes everything." Like who's in the web3 world? Like who do
Mhm.
you think that would be if you could name one?
I mean, like, I guess like I'll talk myself through it. Um, where is reputation most important today, where financialization is the most adjacent to that? And I think in a lot of ways, there's two places. Pump.fun is a pretty damn good one, right? Like, no one knows anything about any of the people that launch Pump.fun coins. It's tough because maybe the market doesn't want that. Maybe the market values that it's totally random, but it's where my brain goes to. Virtuals or any of the infrastructure for people launching things would also be really interesting, right? Like, if you go back to the NFT days, the easiest answer would be you launch an NFT project and you do it through OpenSea or you do it through Manifold or any of the like infrastructure out there, and you know who is backing that, who built it, who backs them, stuff like that. Those are the places right now where the attention is and where reputation, like I argue Pump.fun, the reputation doesn't matter as much. Virtuals is where we're seeing more interest in that area of like, who's the GitHub dev? What's the team do? Like, and then you hear all these like rumors of like they worked on Llama at Facebook or something, and it's like a totally fake thing. And so I think that's like it's what's cool with the Chrome extension is we could do that. We could build that, right? We don't have to like depend on them to go build it. But I think the intersection of where like reputation matters the most and where the money is the most right now is kind of like, I don't know that Virtuals is gonna come screaming back or not, but, like, the meta that we saw 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, launch because launch is
Mhm.
it's so early.
Pre-bonding, yeah, like, yeah, the early launch of, like, why should I it's a launch pad, right?
Yeah.
I
I
also any launch pad, right? Any, like, funding mechanism, right? Where reputation really is important. You have to understand who is, like, behind trying to make you the money.
I overlooked how important it was. Virtuals in the early before it like really took off, I
Mhm,
went on there and my background I have a background in artificial intelligence.
mhm,
Um and I was like, all right, I want to see like what's possible on there. So I
mhm,
literally just named like Hunter's Agent and like it has you like link your Twitter and I launched it and I didn't realize that it would go like to bonding off of that like
mhm.
I
Right,
might have understood, but I was like, "Okay, whatever, like, this isn't it's not gonna get,
right,
like, thrown into a bunch of people's faces,
right.
and I can just
Mhm,
play around the back end of it."
right.
Uh, hugely mistaken there. That was,
Really?
like, a huge gross, oversight on my end of things.
Did
Um,
it launch a token? Like, it launched an
what
agent?
launched and, like, I think I might have, like, launched it, and then I was, like, in a group chat, and I was, like, talking about, like, launching some stuff, and then I opened my Twitter to, like 40 messages from
People being
people.
like, "Did you
They're
launch
like,
the"
"Is this your agent? Is this your
Yeah.
agent?" And then I look at the comments on virtuals and they're like, "Well," they're like linking my ETH wallet to
Oh
other
god.
wallets to my social. And they're like, "Well, no, like he hasn't
Mhm.
tweeted about it." but there was no like, there's this, like, searching for consensus of, "Is this really this guy's
Right.
agent?" And I
Yeah.
had to, like,
Mhm.
go in the virtuals Discord or in the Telegram, and be like, "Please don't buy this, like, it's a
Yeah.
test, like, I'm just
Yeah.
playing around with stuff."
Right.
Um, but it was kind of an eye-opening moment of, okay, everybody is trying to go link social to
Mhm.
EVM wallet to who is this guy? What's his
Mhm.
background? But it was there was no, like, way to do that quickly. It
Yeah.
was drawn out request of yeah, it was not
Linking
a
dots,
pretty
and then
thing.
yeah, there's tons of hand waviness you could add if you did buy the token really early, and all you gotta do is convince 15 other people that Hunter did launch that thing,
Right.
right? Like, and it gets yeah, someone asked me the other day, "Did you launch this thing?" I'm like, "I didn't touch virtuals," and I
Yeah,
had 4 or 5 other people be like, "This is linked to your wallet." I'm like, "It is not linked to my wallet, dude. I don't know what you're talking about." But yeah, I mean, why? Because reputation fucking matters,
it
right?
does.
Like it is the core of how we interact. It is the core of how people invest in things. And the entire thesis of what we are doing is based on quantifying that and making it more accessible. And if you can do that, then you prevent people like in your case from people being like, what the fuck is going on here? And it's like, this is super confusing, and someone potentially acting like they're you, or potentially acting like it is the official token and spoofing a DM from you or something. Like there's so many bad things that can happen. A more trustful space should retain money in the ecosystem much better, prevent extraction.
Exactly. The final, like, additional notes section
Mhm,
for my Echo group submission, it's like, "Do you
mhm.
have any additional comments?" And I put, my reputation is the most valuable asset I own.
Yeah,
And
right.
I wrote, like, a thing about that to Kobe, but, like, it truly in my world, and I think this is also, like, where I've felt the most pain, and I take things
Mm,
very personally, is, like, what people think about me matters quite a
mhm,
bit,
mhm.
but it's the reputation side of it. Like, you can
Totally,
think I'm, like, an ugly dude,
right.
whatever, like, I don't care. You could
Or a bad
whatever.
trader or
Bad trait
like
yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
sick. I couldn't
yeah.
get but, like, the reputation of, like,
Mhm,
bad guy or good guy
right.
or trustworthy or like,
Mhm,
that's the side of things where, like, are you using followers and people as exit liquidity, or do
right,
you
right.
really care about the space and what the technology and the
Mhm.
community that you're part of?
Yep,
Um, v
100%.
but it equally is hard to, again, see that in a singular area.
Mhm.
Um,
It is, and, yeah, like, just as much as we might, like, harp on people that are doing bad things, like, there's so many good people out there that don't have the platform to get into an Echo deal, or don't have the platform or capabilities, yeah, even though they are well connected and know lots of people, to get the reward and recognition they deserve. And you can even imagine just like the normal airdrop model of today is so easily attackable by Sybils. Imagine if I went to a project and I was like, look, here are the like 250 most reputable people on Ethos. Like these people fit these type of criteria, they're vouched and secured by a certain amount of money, and like on average, they don't dump your token, they want to be a part of your community, all of those things. Like that's what every project dreams of, right?
I mean, I keep coming back, like, if and I started to put, like, a dollar or investment thesis against
Mhm,
this, but the comparative is so clear in my head
mhm,
of, if you look at, protocols that are APIs slash, data inputs for projects or
mhm,
AI or whatever it is, Cato has done this very well for, the social
mhm.
side of things with some
Yeah,
on-chain that they'll run out. Cookie has done it really, really well for influence, and, like, volume
mhm,
and also some on-chain stuff. But you guys play into a flavor a rhyme of that, which is
mhm,
the credibility trust score.
mhm.
There's no reason that that isn't equally as important slash that like,
Totally.
you should have like, a dashboard the same way. It tracks,
Mhm.
like, credibility
Most reputable
scores and, like, where
people.
is like who has the most credibility,
Mhm.
what projects, what niches have
Who's
the most
changing
credibility.
the most?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Or what like, what's cool is, like, if you use your real ETH wallet, then we could say, like, what are the most credible people own? What are the most credible people early to? What are the on average, what is the credibility score of a Bored Ape holder versus a,
mutant.
Remilio Babies or Mutants or something? Yeah, like, no offense to either of those projects, but, like, it'd be interesting to say the least.
It would
Um
I would I that is a statistic that does not exist that I would pay money to know, actually.
Mhm. Right, yeah. Yeah, totally. And what's cool is, like, we don't have the Web 2 model, right? Where, like, everyone has a score, you can go see it and consume it. Everything's on chain. If someone else beats us to building that, then that's fucking awesome, right? Like
Right.
I wanna build the community dashboard stuff. We have designs for it even, like how to look at a token and view the average holders and who the most notable and credible holders are. Um, but yeah, I would love for someone else to build that too. That's what I think is kind of fun about it.
Wow.
Um Yeah, and the other thing I was gonna add to that was, like, Kaito or, like, Fantasy Top do a good job of kind of, like they, like, measure attention, right? Which attention is, like, everything right now. And attention, is a section of information in Web3 that is incredibly important, and a complementary one is the reputation side of things. And I think you kind of hit the point on it of, like, you kind of need both of those to get a complete picture of who people are. And, like, a good example, I don't know if I am a subscriber to Kaito, and I like
I
using
am,
it.
yes.
Yeah, and, like, whenever you go use it, it's like they have, like, new projects that have, like, what do they call them? Like, the top influencers that start following them, and so
Smart followers.
smart followers,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and so, like, if smart followers start following that, then you get, like, some signal of, like, "Hey, maybe this is an early project," and you're like, "Yeah, that's, like, one dimension I think is super important." Like, are the insiders or people that know more than most people following it? The other side is, like, how credible are those people? And so I think we have a lot of really complementary data that, like, again, just literally never has been like, we couldn't have built this on Ethereum. We had to build it on Base, right? Like, that had to build this on the L2. So, like, these are still there are innovations happening in crypto that are harder to see right now that are 100% enabled by things that have shipped in the last year or shipped the last 2 years, and we're definitely one of those.
I 100% agree on that. Why can I ask you why base of all L2s? 'Cause it just
Mhm.
I know this is a tangential conversation to what you guys are doing, but
Yeah.
why base?
I feel like the L2 problem is difficult because it's not free to spin up an L2, but, like, the price of spinning up an L2 to spinning up an L1 is much cheaper, and therefore there will be a lot of competition for L2 mindshare. Um, I really liked what Blast did originally with their lending. You could earn on money that was on Blast. Genius, right? Like, super smart. They kind of lost a lot of attention, right, and interest with Blast and gold and stuff like that, and I think people felt farmed after that. And I think Ben, my co-founder, and I really stepped back and said, like, which L2 will be around in 5 years? Like, which of these really will? And I don't mean this as shade to Blast or Arbitrum or Optimism or anything like that, but, like, if I could build it on Ethereum, I would because I think Ethereum has the best chance of being around in 5
Right,
years.
right.
But Base felt the most, like, long-term aligned without the potential wrong incentives, in my opinion. Like, I've always said, like, I don't want Base to have a token because I don't think Base should have a token because it kind of misses the point of like, an L2. It should use Ethereum, right? Like, it's an Ethereum product.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also want a fat airdrop,
I was
but,
about to
like,
say I was gonna say,
yeah.
but
Yeah, yeah. I also want a fat airdrop, but, like, you gotta be realistic about it sometimes too, and so, like, we chose Base because we felt like, well, 1, we had to have something that was cheap enough. Like, it costs, like, 2 cents to write a review on Ethos, I think, on mainnet, or 7 cents or something, and by the way, we're paying for it. We do gas sponsorship. Um, and so that was important, and then the second thing was just, like, who's gonna be around in the long term, and we could have probably gone to Arbitrum and gotten some grants. We probably could have gone to Optimism and gotten some grants, but I didn't. I'm in the trenches, man, and I didn't see anyone using Arbitrum, to be honest, or Optimism. And It was Base or Solana, and really aligned most with the Ethereum ecosystem, so that's why we chose Base.
Good answer. From I think where thinking of longevity is, I think, an important part that a lot of
Mhm,
people don't think about when they're launching on L2s. And again, not to disrespect anybody there. I think the where like how you're approaching the also like what tooling and how
mhm,
that chain is approaching making things happen almost like like for
mhm,
free is probably the wrong term, but like making it seamless, making it easy to onboard, frictionless,
mhm.
has to be a big conversation piece there. But I
Yeah,
also think like for base to not exist in 5 years, one, I'm gonna need if you have an extra room at your house, I'll probably need to move in.
totally.
But
No, I mean
yeah, it's bad. Something bad has gone really wrong if base doesn't
I
exist
think
in
so
5
too.
years.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely still have questions about, a publicly traded company being the majority operator of Base. Like, if you had asked me, I would, why isn't there an ETH L2, right? Like, that's what I want. And it's not enough to make me go like, oh, well, we shouldn't build there. Like, I would say like they have tooling and they have stuff that you can use that's base native, and they do things like pay for gas if you use smart wallet from Coinbase. We actually just went the Privy route, which is a little bit more it agnostic to like what L2 religion you have, and easy to like adapt to other like we could technically add a Solana wallet pretty easily with Privy. And so but we still get all of the benefit of those. So like dude, we got a lot of cool stuff that not a lot of people are doing yet, like smart wallets with like we call them like headless transactions, but like when you upvote an ethos, right? You don't want to sign a transaction every time.
Nope.
When you comment, when you leave a review. And so we have a combination of not having to sign the transaction and us paying the gas where you're interacting with the blockchain, you have no fucking clue. Um,
Which is what the future of the blockchain looks like.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. And we're using smart wallets, which is like, an open standard that anyone can implement through Privy, which is very cool. Being able to pay for gas is like super important for stuff like user experience. And again, it's just crazy. Even like back to the devs on that team, you're like, dude, this shit didn't even exist 6 months ago. Like, we are working on stuff that is like barely out there, and it's
Barely
awesome.
out,
Yeah.
but it is what the future of
Hmm.
on-chain
User
or
experiences are.
user
Yeah.
experiences without
Mhm.
knowing, and you have to have that art. And I guess a question there is like my thought process would have been you guys would have put that as like a hey, down the road we're gonna approach that
Mhm,
because we want the most native users. We want to
mhm.
get stuff out as quick
Right.
as
We
possible, and we
could have
want
done that, yeah.
why build it out in a way where like Joe
It's hard to
Schmo can walk.
reverse.
It's hard.
Yeah,
Okay, that
yeah,
fair
it's
enough.
hard to
Fair
reverse the
enough.
yeah, it's like, well, like,
I,
if our foundation is on chain, then, like, let's just start on chain, and, but we did pay the price. To be super clear, like, we paid the price for that. Um, it's not easy to write smart contracts. You really have to be thoughtful about the future. Like, I come from a background of building software. We have the "fuck it, ship it" mentality. We have the learn from your customers, get it out there, understand how they use it, and change it mentality. Can't do that with smart contracts. Smart contracts are like a fucking N64 cartridge, man. Like you got to get that shit right the first time it goes to Blockbuster or GameStop or whatever, because every kid is gonna have the same bug on it no matter what. You can't do that, and it's a different way of thinking. And so like it has cost our team time to do it the smart contract way. But it was really important to us, and like that was part of the thesis. So that's why we took that, even though most startups, you probably wouldn't want to take that kind of risk in going that far down the like infrastructure and doing everything the right way route.
yeah, but again, you guys are gonna have there's the risk of like a smart contract getting exploited, but like there's also the risk of like let's say you get a month into this and all of a sudden there's an
Mhm,
issue and
mhm.
credibility can be exploited. Like that,
Right. Yeah.
there's like additional levels of risk
And you
here and
just have
different
to
flavors of
yeah. Yeah, and again, even on top of risk, it's like, oh, like I'll give a good example. People are vouching for people. In a smart contract, you can only vouch for someone once. A lot of the feedback we got early on is like, I want to add to my vouch. And you're like, didn't think of that. You're right." Like, yeah, like, that makes sense, and so, like, we were fortunately in the middle of getting our smart contract audited, so we were able to add that feature and functionality, but you're like, you can't get all of that shit right to start. Like, you're just not going to imagine how everyone expects to use the product, and so that is one of the harder parts of writing code in smart contract land for sure. And we it's a risk that we are still taking on theoretically because we still don't know if we got everything right and how hard it would be to change.
Right. Yeah. And I guess also, like, for people that are listening that haven't worked with smart contracts before,
Hmm.
I launched a collection I have called 555.
Hmm.
The day before launching, I realized that they had made it so that the first token that got minted was number 0, and so
Hmm.
when it minted all the way out, you only went up to number
554.
554. And I remember sitting there being like, that is gonna drive me fucking nuts. If yeah, because like, you can't
Yeah.
change that,
No,
and they
there's
were
nothing
like
you could
they're
do.
like, "We would have to re-audit everything, and you're gonna miss
Hmm.
launch that day," and I was like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, no, I guess we're stuck in," like, but that,
Yeah.
like, just even something that seems like, "Hey, you're just changing something," like, you
Hmm.
actually need to sit back and go through everything because you wanna make sure that, okay, all of a sudden the logic doesn't work the same.
Right.
You looked over something, and now it doesn't stop minting at 5.5, it just keeps going.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Well, you've just taken in, 500, 55 ETH worth of capital at the
Hmm.
time,
Right.
and now you're dealing with this, and it keeps going and going, and
Hmm.
now you have a real mess on your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
so one of the things with NFTs that was great, and this is even true on Solana in a lot of regards, is you just copy the smart contract audit, right? Like, I mean, the smart contract itself. So, like, you had an NFT, you could just copy all the code. It's already been audited. If you don't make any changes to it, then you have your 1 to 10,000 NFT that pointed to IPFS and all that stuff like that. And so, like, there was no risk. And, like, that is one thing as an industry that's tough is like, you want to get to a point where people can iterate and ship fast. And smart contracts are always, always the hurdle for that. Like, and it's an unfortunate reality, but when you deal with financial assets, don't fuck with people's money, right? Like, you need to make sure that there is no risk that they are losing money, and so it's a price you pay, it's a tax you pay, right?
it is. Last question before we wrap up here,
Mhm.
and I appreciate you for the time again.
Yeah, yeah. No, thanks for having me.
You on the topic of, like, building, can you talk
Hmm.
about what on the, like, dev side of things, what the
Hmm.
last 8 months has been like? How has it been hard to find good devs? How did
Hmm.
you get your team put together? I think a lot we not enough people talk about the actual, like, building side of it,
Yeah. Oh, I'd love
ideation
to.
phase and
Hmm.
prototyping and MVP. Can you just walk through a little bit of that?
Yeah, so some background on me. I'm a product guy. I had a product job at a place called Atlassian, and have been a product leader in my past experience and taught people how to do product management. So I come from the product background, which is like, what do we build? Why do we build it? What are customers saying? How do we adapt to it? What do we prioritize and why? And fortunately for me, my co-founder and I had worked together at Atlassian in their incubator, so we had a lot of familiarity with building new products, but also working together. We have two developers who work with us at Atlassian too, that we had a lot of experience working with. That makes us go a lot faster. We also leveraged contractors and people that helped us do some of the smaller stuff, the front end things, the things that we knew we needed to do but weren't as impactful or as important. And that helped us be flexible with building while being able to, like, in April of last year, there was a bull market. Like, it was a little crazy. We were like, well, shit, we got to go faster. And so it wasn't until April when we really started employing people. And we have a designer who also worked with us at Atlassian, which is why our product looks so amazing. And we knew what we wanted to build. We knew how to build it. It was a new challenge for all of us with smart contracts. It was hard to find smart contract devs, to be honest. It was very hard. In the most, like, desired to have trust role. Like you really want to trust the smart contract devs. Um, you need to really know who those people are, and we didn't have luck, to be honest. Like it was really tough, and so my co-founder Ben, who has an incredible amount of experience writing code at many places, including tiny startups and scaling them, was able to adapt and write the smart contract code himself, which is super helpful. Um, but I'd say that's one of the harder parts is definitely the smart contract and then integrating it into the front end. But we managed a dev team that went, up to 8 devs, and now we're at 4 devs. I LARP as a dev sometimes and write code with Cursor, but I like it because I kind of fix things up. And I would say, like honestly, we've just been heads down. I'm a big believer in like, don't wave and shake your hands and say you got something interesting until you're ready to let people use it.
You guys
Like,
have been quiet. I mean,
yeah,
not like dead
no,
quiet,
no,
but
you're
like
right
I mean, you guys have been I started doing research into Ethos when you guys first got tagged, and
though.
I started kinda reviewing, and I was like, "Well, this is weird." Like, there are some very smart people that I consider friends who are aware
Mhm,
of you,
mhm.
but it doesn't feel like there's been a lot of shouting and hand
Can't do
waving
it,
or
man. I
anything.
can't I just can't do it. Like, I'm not the snake oil salesman. I'm not saying anyone there's a lot of snake oil salesmen in the space, and there are a lot of people that are really good at doing that in good ways for businesses that say, "This is why you should pay attention. We're doing something really impactful." But I believe in marketing through product. Like, you build a good product, you, Hunter, you go use it, and you're like, "Whoa, that's kinda fucking cool." I come do stuff like this and talk about it and bring my product mind to it, and that's why people want to talk about it, right? That's why people are interested.
Exactly.
And I think it's a very different mantra than a lot of people take, and it's just because of our roots and where we come from. It's like you build a good product, you get it into a few people's hands, you build really good kind of like referral mechanisms into it, and you'll just slowly build up over time. And so that's been my thesis, and so it's been fun. We've been building really, like, heads down building for 8 months, and now it's time to fucking go, so that's why I'm here.
Well, I'm excited, man. Mainnet next week.
Next week. Mhm.
People can still get in testnet today,
Yep.
to be part of that snapshot.
Mhm.
Um, and it sounds like is an endless things of features, integrations planned for down the road.
Totally.
And you guys are again addressing one of the most relevant issues that we have in crypto today.
100%, and I hope that everyone that is listening to this can get some value out of Ethos, and that is not an easy thing to say in crypto, but if we can help prevent you from getting rugged or clicking a scam link even, or just being able to have more due diligence on things, I think that's really what our goal is. And yeah, I'm excited to share that with everyone.
Man, I'm excited. I'm so thankful for the time to jump on here. If you haven't
Yeah.
already and you're listening, make sure you go follow OX5F Capital or Ethos_network on Twitter,
Yep.
or check out ethos.network, their website, to check out testnet and get in their Discord. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. And to everybody
Yeah.
who tuned in today, thank you for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.